Family and Consumer Science Agent in Harnett County.
And I'm Jakey Helton, 4-H agent here in Harnett County. And boy, I sure enjoyed that visit out to the livestock farm today. So, Greg, now we're back in the kitchen. What are we cooking today?
Yeah, so Jackie, today we talked all about beef, so we're going to cook a beef and broccoli today. So this is a very popular Asian dish that you might have tried before, and we're going to show you how you can do this and make this at home.
That sounds great and delicious.
And delicious. All right, and so what we're going to do today is we've got a couple things, and we've got a couple of ideas of how we might need to prepare these and what order we might want to prepare them. So we're going to do a beef and broccoli, so we're going to have to prepare the beef, we're going to have to prepare the broccoli. We're also going to make a sauce for this. So beef and broccoli, what makes it so tasty is that yummy sauce that it has on it. So we're going to show you what all is in that sauce and how you can make this at home. And then usually with this dish, we're going to add some form of starch in it. You can either do noodles, or today we're actually going to do rice. So we're going to show you how to make rice straight from the bag and what that process looks like.
That sounds great.
All right, so so when we think about this, Jackie, I'm going to look at my recipe and I'm going to give you some ideas, and we're going to talk about what you think we ought to start with. All right.
Sounds
so
good.
For our and as we've talked about throughout all our cooking things, whenever we start to think about how we're going to prepare this meal, we want everything ready at the same time. So we want to think about how do we make that happen. And so some things take longer to cook, some things take very short amount of times to cook. So we want to make sure we're preparing them that way. With our rice, Jackie, it says I'm going to look, and anytime you buy rice at the store, if you have your own rice, it's going to have a recipe usually on the back. It's going to have two recipes. It's going to have one you can do on the stovetop, which is the one I think we're going to try today. But if you don't have a stovetop, you can always use a microwave. So there's normally a way to convert that and make that happen in the microwave. So for this one, it says that it's going to take us about 20 minutes of cook time for our rice. So now we think about that. So we've got 20 minutes of cook time on our rice. Now for my beef and broccoli, it looks like it's going to take us about 10 minutes of prep time to get our things ready to go, and then only about 10 minutes of cook time. So thinking about that, what do you think we should start with first?
Well, I definitely want to make sure that I'm eating hot food. So if it's only going to take about 10 minutes to do this, and it takes 20 minutes to cook the rice, that also doesn't include how long it takes to get the water, I guess, boiling. So there's some extra time there. So it sounds like we should start with the rice.
Exactly. So that's what we're going to do. And so for our rice, what we're going to try to think about too when we're preparing this meal is this meal is made for about 4 servings, so about 4 people. So this could be a family of 4, or this could be for you and 3 of your friends. And so what we're going to do is we're going to prepare this to try to make 4 servings of this dish. And so when I look at my rice here, and I can just look on the back, it tells me that I need to make 1 cup of dry rice is going to yield me roughly 3 cups of cooked rice, and that'll give me about 4 servings. So a serving, according to this, is roughly around 3/4 of a cup cooked. So to do that, I'm going to need 2 cups of water. So I've already pre-measured out my water into my saucepan, and I've got that ready. My 2 cups of water are in there and ready to go. And so what I need to do is go ahead and get that boiling, because the way that we're going to cook rice, and this is a pretty traditional way they cook rice, is you're going to boil your water and get it nice and hot and boiling, and then you're going to add and stir in your rice, and then reduce your heat down and continue that cooking process covered for about 20 minutes.
Is there a reason why you cover rice for when it's cooking? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly. I know that every recipe I've seen, that's how you do it. The only recipe that I would say that you typically might not cover it would be if you're trying to do like a Mexican rice, where you're crisping the rice ahead of time, and then you're adding in the water. And even sometimes then they'll say to keep it covered at times. So
maybe they're trying to keep that extra steam in there to make it extra hot and, and keep it moist.
Could be to keep all that heat in there and keep it cooking through. So and this goes back to anytime you're following a new recipe, always follow the recipe that first time. And then if you see, oh, maybe if I try this and this, it might adjust and do a little bit better. So you can always adjust it later, but try and get true to it as much as possible that first time will help you. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get this put over onto our stove and get it ready to go and started boiling. And then I'll measure out my rice and have that ready to add in just a little bit.
Sounds great.
All right, so I'm going to put this over here. All right, and you'll notice, or you wouldn't be able to see, but what I did is when I put that on there, do you think I should put it on low heat, medium heat, high heat, if I'm trying to boil it? What do you think, Mr. Jackie?
I think the hotter the better.
Exactly. So a lot of times we'll boil water here, and people who've never boiled water, they'll put it on like a medium or medium high heat. And it's possible that you could get to a boil at those heats, but with boiling, we know it's going to take a little while, so we want to go as fast as possible, and we're not trying to to control the temperature. We're trying to maximize the temperature so we can go as high as we want to go. All right, so I've got that ready. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab me a little measuring cup and go ahead and measure this rice out. So as soon as I see that that's boiling, I'll be ready to put it in. So I'm going to grab that out. And Mr. Jackie, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get ready to make a sauce. So do you want to tell them a little bit about maybe what a sauce typically will have in it? What's some of the things that might have in it?
Well, about a week ago we were doing an outdoor cookery program, and we wanted to have something to help tenderize the meat. So we want to have some flavors in those sauces and things that's going to make it taste good, right? I mean, today we're going to be using soy sauce, which is actually going to help break down the meat just a little bit and actually add some flavor. But we know that it can be used in a marinade, so it's going to have that delicious flavor in it. Also, you got to have some seasonings and herbs and things like that, some sort of flavor that's going to be addition. So I think today the recipe's calling for us to add some ground ginger, which is one of the, you're talking about having those Asian spices in there. That is definitely an Asian spice.
Yep, good. So what I think we'll do is I'll have you mix up my sauce for me. And I'll tell you the ingredients and tell you the measurements, and you'll put them in there for us. What do you think about that?
Sounds great.
All right. So for this particular sauce we're using, Mr. Jackie mentioned a couple things. He mentioned our ground ginger. He mentioned some soy sauce that we might have in there. So this one, these are very traditional Asian flavors, like you said. And so we're gonna use for the base of this sauce is gonna be our soy sauce. And so we're going to start off, and let's throw in about about a half a cup of our soy sauce.
All right. I'm going to use this particular measure cup. It's actually designed to be both wet and dry. It's even got me a little spout there to help me pour it out. I'm going to actually do this over my bowl, so just in case I was to have a little bit of a mess, it's not going to be all over the table. It'll be in my bowl. So this is one of the things we always talk to the youth when we're doing the program with them. Little things, because what happens when we make a mess, Mr. Greg?
We got to clean it up.
Got to clean it up. So if we can reduce that mess, it's less cleanup for us.
Exactly.
Do you like cleaning up?
I know it's part of the process, but the less the better.
Exactly.
All right, so while he's getting that soy sauce ready, another thing that it mentions in this recipe is garlic, and it talks about fresh minced garlic. And this might be a new term that you've never heard of with minced. And what minced means, when we talked about how to chop things up and how to chop up a lot of our plants, we talk about trying to get them to a certain size. So minced is a very, very small size. And so I'm going to show you a technique of how to mince up things like garlic and potentially other herbs and stuff like that. So garlic is similar to like an onion, and it's similar to other like bulbous kinds of vegetables and herbs and things. And so it's kind of in this little pod, and this little dry part, we're not gonna want to eat that part generally. And what we need to do is we need to get it where we can pull this out, because it tells me I need 1 clove of minced garlic. So do you know what a clove is, Mr. Jackie?
I know what a clove is, but I can't wait to show somebody what it looks like.
Exactly.
Because I don't know if I could explain what a clove is.
Exactly. So so what we're going to do, we've got to figure out a way to open this up and get this ready. So one of the easiest ways to do it, and if you have a sleeve on your knife, this works better than having to do it with a open face knife, or you could always get something else to help you press down. But you just want to do this, and you've probably heard the term pressing the garlic, and a lot of what that means in this term is just breaking this, and you'll see it, and you hear that little pop, and what that pop means is that I've opened it up, and now I can actually reach in and pull out a clove, and just like that. So that gives me my 1 clove of garlic.
You know, I've never done that particular process, so from now on I've got to. What's it called? Pressing
the garlic. And so you can press the garlic to open it up this way, or you can also press the garlic later on. They have garlic presses that help to actually to really get a really paste. So you might have something called for a garlic paste. So you might hear it both ways. So I'm going to pull that off because I won't need that. And this extra garlic will last for can last for several weeks up to a month, as long as it's like this. Now, once you break it down, then you're going to have, it's just going to be like any other leftover.
Mr. Greg, I see that our water is boiling. Should we add our rice now?
Yep, I think we're ready to go. So I've got some boiling water. So what I'm going to do, and this is part of cooking that you're going to see today, is how a lot of times what happens is things don't always go, consistently. So what happens is when you get something going, you got to go over here. So you'll see in a kitchen, if you ever go into a kitchen at a restaurant, it's crazy. They're moving everywhere. They're behind you, chef, and behind you, and all these kind of things is because they've got so many moving parts to get that perfect dish ready for you. Because like we said, everything doesn't cook at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and get my my cup of rice into my pan, and once I put that in there, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to stir that in and get that ready, and then I'm going to come down and reduce my heat. Now when I reduce my heat, I want it to be low heat. So if you've got like a 9 to a 10 gauge on there, you want to get it down somewhere around 3 or maybe even a little less. And what that's going to do is that's going to be a nice little simmer. And what I want to do is I want to keep my eye on this, because sometimes with rice you'll get a little bit of boil over. You'll get some bubbles that'll rise, and sometimes they'll come outside of your pot. And so you always want to just keep an eye on it.
Should we set a timer for maybe it cooks for 20 minutes, maybe for 10 to 15, so we can check on it?
Yep.
Again?
So I think I'm gonna set my timer and for about 15 minutes, and that way I can go back and check on it.
We've learned in our house by setting those timers when you got multiple things going on, because you're preparing at different stages, it lets you know, hey, I need to check on that, because the worst thing you can do is start a program, something, and then you let it burn because you weren't paying attention. So timers are very important in the kitchen.
Exactly. All right, so I'm going to go back to my my fresh garlic now and get this ready for Mr. Jackie's sauce that he's preparing for us. So when you see this one too, you'll see that it's kind of like an onion. It has these little pieces of dry, scaly looking stuff on the outside, and so I want to go ahead and get that off because I don't want to eat that. So I'll go back to my knife skills, and what I'm going to do for this one is I'm going to come in and I'm going to take the ends off. And what this is going to do, you'll see it kind of opens up this nice nice piece, and sometimes it'll be so easy as you can go ahead and just pop it off like that. It'll start to kind of peel back itself. If not, you can take the other end off, and then once you get it here, it'll really start to make it a little bit easier to take off. And then a lot of times what I like to do is I like to come in and make a little indentation around the edge, and that little indentation will help me to get that little peel to peel right back. All right, so once I get that peeled back here, now I'll just get my trash out of the way that I'm not going to use. And now I need to mince it. So what do I need to do for a mince? So mince is going to be a very small chop is basically what it is. So it's an extra small chop. And so for my garlic, this is a small item already, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it just like I'd break down anything to begin with. And I'm going to try to make it into little small pieces, and then I'm also going to get it into little small strips, and then I'll show you the process of what really makes it a mince. Alright, so I'm going to come in here, and just like anything else, I'm going to go down and through, and I'm just trying to make little bitty flat surfaces. Alright, so I've got my little flat surfaces here. So now I can stack some of these up if I want to, or if you're not comfortable with the stack, you can go one at a time. And then I'm just going to come down, and I'm going to go the opposite way. And I'm just going to make little bitty strips. And once I get these little bitty strips, then I'll come back across them in a second. So I've got here, I got this one little piece, and we'll finish up. Alright, so my little strips. So now I've got these little bitty, almost matchstick looking pieces. And so then I'm going to try to stack a couple of these up and go across the other way. So I'm just basically slowly breaking it down, trying to use as many cuts or as few cuts as possible. So I'm going to come back this way, and I'm going to go just like this. And Mr. Jackie, if I didn't have fresh garlic at home, what's something I could use instead?
Well, they do make garlic powder and garlic salt. There's two different versions, and you might use them differently. But I think garlic powder is a great substitute. But I'm going to tell you, since we've been cooking together and doing these programs, I use a lot more real garlic, because when you have that flavor and taste, there is a difference, I think, in the dish, a better quality when you're using the real thing.
Exactly. So fresh garlic is going to have much more pop in the flavor. It's just different, and so it's one of those things that if you haven't ever tried, it's a good idea to give it a try and see if you like it. It is a little bit more work than using something. If I was going to use something like a dried garlic, so a dried garlic you can buy at the store, And this particular thing, you would have a little bit different conversion. So if it calls for 1 clove, it might be maybe a fourth of a teaspoon or maybe half of a teaspoon of your dried. And you can look those conversions up usually on the back of the powder. So now what I'm going to do is I've got some thick little pieces, some little bitty fine chop, and I'm just going to go back and I'm just going to go across. And I'm using this kind of almost like a triangle movement. And I'm going back and forth this way, just like this, back and forth, back and forth. And I'm just going to keep going until I get it down to the mince that I'm looking for. And as I start to get it accumulating on my knife, I'll just slide it off and go right back and do it again.
So Greg, why are we mincing this? Why wouldn't we just want big chunks of garlic in our sauce?
Yep, so similar to how we've talked about with if you have spicy ingredients or really pop, strong flavor ingredients, when you're getting a bite of something, you don't want to get a huge bite of garlic or a huge bite of something spicy. And so we want it to be evenly throughout our dish. And so this allows us to get it into little pieces and go all throughout our dish.
Got you. Yeah, if you had a really big chunk in there, you're really going to taste that, and you might not get the full flavor of the beef or whatever else is in there.
Exactly. It might be too overpowering. All right, so what I'm going to do now that I've got this garlic is I'm going to go ahead and put it into our sauce. Got a little bit more. I want to get all this fresh garlic in there. It smells wonderful.
Oh, it does.
All right. And one thing about working with garlic is your hands will get a little sticky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rinse up my hands real quick. And Mr. Jackie, also in this recipe, it calls for some ginger. And like we talked about, ginger can come in fresh ginger where you would have to grate it or potentially mince it up similar to this. But it also can come in dried, and you might have some dried ginger already at the house. And so what we thought, instead of using the fresh for this one, we're going to do a little conversion. So Mr. Jackie, it calls for about a tablespoon of fresh ginger. So what do you think the conversion would be for that?
Well, I know fresh is, it takes a lot less or a lot more fresh to equal what is in the dried out ingredients.
So it's definitely going to be less.
So it's probably either going to be half or maybe even a quarter.
Exactly. So we're going to use a quarter of a teaspoon today to emulate what it would be if we would have a full tablespoon of our ginger.
Okay, so it takes 1/4. Gotcha.
1/4.
Well, guess what? I just happen to have that measurement out there. It's like you planned this.
I know. And so as he gets that, I'm going to go ahead and rinse up my hands real quick just to make it easier to handle the rest of my stuff.
When you're working with dry ingredients and seasonings like this, they do actually have it where the cap will come off, so it makes it easier for using a measuring spoon in there. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to use the side to help sort of get it off. But just like since we're not baking, if I get a little bit more in there, it's going to be okay. I'm going to use the side of that, and I'm going to go ahead and pop that right in there. And I'll put that back on. Of course, now, if I had used this for something else, another seasoning or something, I wouldn't want to put that in there. You wouldn't want to cross-contaminate your spices with something like that. So,
exactly.
All right. Is there anything else that goes in this sauce?
All right. So for that sauce, I think we need a little bit of cornstarch. And so for cornstarch, let's just go for this recipe. It actually has a total of 3 tablespoons of cornstarch. But for this part, we're only going to put 1.
For 1. Okay, got you. So I'll start off with 1 tablespoon. And what's cornstarch doing for our recipe? You know, we add different things. You know, is this going to make it taste like corn?
So it's not going to have any flavor differences. It's not going to add any flavor. What this is actually doing is we're using this to add a thickening agent. So what with a sauce, especially a sauce that's going to coat something like our beef and our broccoli, we want it to gel to it and create like a really thick sauce on it. So we don't want this to be like a runny sauce that's like a soupy kind of thing. So what this will do while he whisks it up is going to actually help combine in there and help thicken up this sauce, especially later on.
Wow, I can really get the soy and the garlic coming out of there. And I don't smell corn, so I guess that's a good thing.
I guess so. All right, and also too, I've got a couple things, and this is kind of a tip and trick to any time you're making any sauces or making any things. Even though it might not call for it, I always recommend adding a little salt and pepper. It just kind of brings out some of those flavors. So what I'm gonna have Mr. Jackie do is just add a couple dashes of salt and a couple dashes of pepper into this sauce, and just to give it a little bit of extra oomph.
There you go.
All right. So now that we've got the sauce ready, now I guess we're down to to our main parts of this, and that's going to be our beef and our broccoli. So one thing you will notice is that we've separated, and we're kind of very separated ourselves in how we've kept things. And I've kept the broccoli over here, and Mr. Jackie's kept the beef over there. And the main reason we do that is because we want to prevent cross-contamination. So I don't want to cut up my garlic and cut up my broccoli with my beef, because I might not get this broccoli to the temperature that's needed to cook and to kill whatever would be in that beef. So that's the main reason I'm doing that. Now, if you're putting these things all in the same stir fry in the same pan, it's a little bit different. So you wouldn't have to necessarily worry, because you're going to cook it all to the same temperature. So if you cook the beef, you're going to cook all the beef juices off of everything. But for today, let's just assume that we're going to prepare it as if this would be a salad that would never be cooked, and then this would be a beef. And so just so you can practice those things, because a little extra safety is never bad.
Yeah, that's what we do at home. Like when we make up fajitas or something, even though it's going to be cooked together, we go ahead just for good practice. We do our vegetables first, and then we do the chicken or whatever else we would cook with it. So just to always sort of keep that good food safety practice.
Exactly. For this beef, what we're actually going to do, and we talked about that gelling aspect and trying to create that that little bit of gel on there to stick this sauce to it. So this recipe calls for putting a couple of tablespoons, so I think it's 3 tablespoons of water, and putting a couple tablespoons, so 2 tablespoons of cornstarch in there, and that's what we're actually going to dredge and hold our beef in before we get ready to cook it. So I'm going to have Mr. Jackie go ahead and get that ready, so whenever he starts cutting this beef, he can put it right into that mixture.
Sounds great. I've already actually measured out my 3 tablespoons of water, so I didn't have to do that behind me there. And I'll go ahead and add the 2 tablespoons. And I gave my quick rinse to my whisk. I didn't have to because the flavor's going to be there, but I just wanted to make sure, you know, just good practice.
All right.
So there's 1 and 2. You know, Greg, one of the fun things is there's a cool science experiment you could do with cornstarch and water. We call it oobleck. There's a Dr. Seuss book that talks about it. But you can actually make, and if you can see here as I'm trying to stir it, it's really hard to stir. But you can make a liquid and a solid, depending on whether you're moving it or not. So I could pour it, and it would pour like water, but I could pick it up like a ball if I used the right amount of cornstarch and water together.
Wow, that's interesting.
I like to use green food coloring as well, because, you know, 4-H, I like green. It's normally a light colored green, but it's fun to play with. So if y'all got some time, just know that can make a mess, so be prepared to clean it up.
All right, so it looks like that's mixed good together. We'll go ahead and get that beef ready, because I think what we're going to do is we're going to cook our beef first, and then we're going to set it to the side and let it rest a little bit, because anytime we're cooking meat, it's always good to give it a little bit of rest time after you cook it. So we'll go ahead and get it cut up and ready for our to go into our mixture, and then get ready to go into our pan, and then I'll prepare the vegetables after that.
Now, when we were selecting our meat for this particular dish, we went with a stir-fry beef. Is there a reason why we went with this versus maybe a stew meat, for instance?
Yeah, so depending on the cut of meat, it kind of depends on how you would prepare it and how you would cook it. So if you were going to use a stew meat, it's meant to be cooked at lower temperatures for long periods of time. And so it's going to be a much tougher, much hardier type of meat. So if you were to put that in here and then you got ready to eat, it's very likely that it would be very chewy and very hard and very tough. Doesn't mean you can't do it, but it's not going to give you the quality product that you're going to get from something like the stir-fry meat. So the stir-fry meat that we've already got, you can see it's cut into thin pieces, making it less cook time, and then also it'll go great when we saute it in the pan.
Yeah, if I was going to use this for my homemade fajitas, I probably wouldn't even cut it up anymore because it's in nice thin strips. But thinking about eating this as a beef and broccoli dish and the bite sizes we're going to do there, I'm probably going to third those up to make them like a piece that you'd get on a fork to eat it with.
That sounds great. And so we've talked about it before, but always think about how your guest or how you are going to eat these items and how it's going to go and what's going to be with. So versus having, if you do have large strips, you're going to have to serve it with a knife, so they're going to have a way to break it down. So good. All right, so we'll go ahead and get that ready and get that put in here.
All right. I'm going to take it, like you can see how the strips are, they're very thin, so these are going to cook fairly quickly. I'm going to sort of do what you were doing and sort of doing that see here, I want to do about third, thinking about, like I say, sizes that's going to be good on a fork. And make sure I get my
pinch grip.
Awesome. All right, now I'm just going to go ahead as I do this and go ahead and get it into the solution. All right. So just pulling it off.
And I can tell just how easy the knife is going through this, that this is a much tenderer piece of meat, and it's been broken down enough to make it to where it's going to be very easy, and we aren't going to have to cook it for long periods of time. So that's going to make it a really good meat for what we're using.
And you know what's nice about this dish too, you know, one of the reasons I have a family of 6, I can use a little less meat but still be able to feed everybody in the family. So doing a stir fry like this is a great choice sometimes for a big family, especially with some of the prices of meat. Maybe beef is up a little bit because of what's been going on. So this is a way maybe to stretch it so you can get the flavor, but not have to pay an exorbitant high fee for it.
Yep, and you can always too, if you're wanting to add a little bit more protein to a dish like this with less meat, or let's say that you're a vegetarian and you aren't going to eat meat at all, you can always, it wouldn't be a traditional beef and broccoli, but what you could do is you could add in mushrooms. So adding in mushrooms gives it nice amounts of protein, and you kind of get a kind of a hearty, richy flavor to go with your broccoli that would coat great with your sauce too. So a lot of times we use mushrooms as a substitute, as a meat substitute in dishes, or to kind of thin it out, like you said, because typically you can get mushrooms a little bit better deal than you can get beef.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and move this cutting board to the sink, wash my hands, and then I'm going to come back and stir that meat into the mixture.
All right, so that sounds good. So while he's working on that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get our broccoli ready. So broccoli, you can buy broccoli already broken down, but traditionally when you get it, you're going to have it something like this, and it's going to be on a stalk. And a lot of times this stem will be very long, so you might have a longer stem to cut off. But for this one, it's a little bit shorter. And as I'm getting ready to do that, I can hear my rice, my first timer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and check my rice just to make sure, because I don't want to overcook my rice. So I'm going to check that rice, and then I'm going to determine if I need to keep cooking it a little bit longer. All right.
All right, while you're doing that, I'm going to grab a spoon out of here, and I'm going to go ahead and mix up the meat into the sauce here that help it get stuck in here. So I want to make sure everything's touching and getting some of that moisture in there. So that cornstarch and water has a chance to help the sauce stick when we do our stir fry later.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull this rice over here and show you. So when I pull this rice off, I can already tell that just based on the small amount and the heat that I was able to get on there, that this rice is pretty much done. This is what I want to see. I don't see any water down in the bottom. It's not putting out a lot of water. Also, it's fluffy, it's nice. So what I'm doing here is I'm just fluffing this rice. So I'm just basically breaking it apart. So rice has lots of starches in it, and so that starch will make it, that's what makes it gum up and stick together. So I'm just going to try to fluff it now, just so I'm letting some of that rice separate, and it'll be ready for our stir fry. And what I'm going to do after I do this is I'm just going to sit it back over there on my oven or on my stove. And I'm going to have it just sit with the top on it so it stays nice and warm. And it'll be ready for my dish. Because we're getting close to where we're going to be ready to cook our beef and broccoli. And so this will be warm and ready to go. All right.
We got a great coating on our meat now, so we can just let it rest there until we're ready to start cooking.
All right, so I think what you can do is you can go ahead and get your pan ready, because while I cut this up, letting that pan get some heat to it, so we can go ahead and get that meat in there soon, because this will go in afterwards.
Sounds good. I'm going to slide this way just a little bit now.
All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down this broccoli. And broccoli, it's a much larger thing to work with than some of our other vegetables. But what I'm going to do, and the way I'm going to go about it, is I'm going to try to cut back a little bit on my stem here. And what that's going to do is that's going to release a lot of these, a lot of the florets that are on the top. Because I don't want to eat this too much of this stem, especially this part down here, because it's going to be very tough and very hard, very difficult to chew. And so, especially for this recipe, because I'm not going to cut or I'm not going to cook it for very, very long. So I'm just going to come back here, and I might have to use a little bit of a sawing motion, and I'm just going to try to break it down just like that. All right, so I've gotten a big bulk piece off, and what I'll do is I'll just come in here, take this floret off because I'm going to use that. I'll take these right here. All right, and there's really no perfect way to do broccoli other than just making sure you get that big hunk stem that you're not going to eat. All right, so I'm going to put these over to the side, and then I'm going to come right back in here. Some of these will just pull off naturally. And then I'm gonna cut it one more time down the middle, so I've got something to work with. And as you see, there's different parts here, and I can cut it back as close as I'd want to if I want smaller pieces, or if I want to leave more of this stem, I can do that. But these stems right here will be quite tasty. These will be fine. Versus if I had this big, huge piece, it'd be much more difficult to cook long enough and to eat. So it is edible. It's just for this dish, it's not going to work really good. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and break down these, take a little bit of stem off. All right.
Well, you're breaking those down. How many different ways, you said we're going to cook it differently today. How's some different ways you actually cook broccoli?
Yeah, so broccoli can be cooked, and this kind of goes for almost every vegetable, so or for a lot of your vegetables. A lot of them you can actually cook in the microwave. So you can steam it in the microwave by just putting it into a microwave-safe dish, putting a tad bit of water in there and covering it, and microwaving. Typically, something like broccoli would only take 3 to 8 minutes, depending on how much you had and also how soft you would like it. But broccoli is one of those too that you can actually eat raw. So you can eat it raw, and it's great that way. But for some people, it's a little bit of a bitter taste, and so by cooking it, it kind of breaks it down. And we put that nice sauce that we're going to have on there. It's going to be even better. All right, so I'm just going to cut a little bit more of my stem. And what I'm going to try to do for this, I'm going to try to get some pieces that are fairly similar. So I've got some really tiny pieces, which are fine. And then I've got some pieces that are kind of like medium pieces, so I might break these down a little bit more. And I want to try to get everything roughly in that because I want to think about it as something I could grab and eat in one bite. All right, so I'm going to keep breaking these down a little bit. How's our pan looking over there?
I think we're about ready to cook. I cut it on all the way on high so I could get the temperature up. Now I'm going to back it down. Do you remember what temperature I'm supposed to cook this on? Is it about medium high?
About medium high.
Gotcha. Like I said, I want to get my pan hot. So now, I guess the next thing I need to do is put a little bit of oil in there before I add my meat, correct?
Exactly.
All right, part of this is for making sure that it doesn't stick, but also there's a little bit of flavor in that oil too.
Exactly.
All right, so now I'm just going to move my pan back and forth just to help spread the oil around because I didn't want to put much oil in there. We're not doing a deep fry, pan fry, we're just putting enough oil in there just to help, like I say, get the bottom coated and to listen to that sizzle.
Oh yeah, that's perfect. That's how you know you got a nice hot pan, when you get a nice sizzle. And so what Mr. Jack can do is he'll spread this out so he can help it to cook evenly.
All right, yep. Now we'll put this over here. And now I've got my trusty spatula. And why do they call it a stir fry?
Because we stir it.
There you go.
So with a stir fry, if we were doing like anytime you see any Asian stir fries, a lot of times they'll make them in a wok, and it's this big, huge bowl. And the reason they do that is because they'll get it really hot, and they can continuously stir it, and they can basically toss it around with large portions. And so by stirring it, you keep the cooking process so it doesn't cook too strong or too much on one side, and you keep that doing. And it's usually at very high heat when you're doing a traditional stir fry.
Oh, those smells are coming up already.
All right, so I'll just keep this broccoli, breaking it down, and like I said, all of these pieces are hopefully going to be something that I could eat in one bite. And grab with a fork in one bite.
So Greg, my meat's not done yet, but if I remember in this recipe, I'm going to cook the meat until it's done, right?
Yep.
And then I'm going to pull it off?
Yeah, so we're gonna what we're gonna do is if we were to put this broccoli into our pan right now with the meat, we would probably overcrowd our pan, and what would happen is it would take a long time for it to cook. We wouldn't get the right kind of sears that we're looking for, and so what we're gonna do is we're gonna cook the meat first, get that to the right temperature that we're looking for, and get that to the right color. Take it off, and then put in our broccoli. So that way we've got a little bit more time. So we've got a decent amount of broccoli here. And so that way it'll have time to cook, and then we can throw our beef back in at the end, put our sauce in there, make it all come together nicely.
You know, one of the other things I love about doing it this way, where I cook the meat first and I pull it out, then I add my vegetables, there's a lot of beautiful flavor on the bottom of this pan where that meat's cooked. and all those flavors can then be absorbed by some of the broccoli that's in there, helping to add that beef flavor throughout the entire meal. So it's really going to come out with that sauce in there too. So.
Yep. All right, so it's looking like it's cooking pretty good, doing pretty good overall. And then with our sauce, what would happen if we put our sauce in right now? If we put it in really early?
Well, you know, that sauce, we added a little bit of cornstarch, right? Mm-hmm. And what do we say cornstarch does?
It gels.
It gels.
Makes thicking.
So if we put it in there too early, it's going to thicken, and then we wouldn't have any sauce for our broccoli, mm-hmm. for one. But also, it can start burning once it starts gelling. You know,
exactly.
So.
Yep. So if we put it in too early, what we could have happen is we could have it actually stick to the pan and then start to burn. And if we burn our sauce, it's going to give a very off taste to our dish. It's also going to not be what we're looking for in the end as far as the complete product. So there's a reason that a lot of times with recipes they say do things in certain increments or in certain order, and that's because of different things that are playing into it. All right, so
we're getting close. I still see some pink in the beef, and of course, right now we're definitely trying to cook that out of it. Now this would be really hard because the meat's so thin to temp it. Mm-hmm. Correct with the thermometer, because normally when we're doing outdoor cooker, we're doing thick cuts of meat, and we need to temp it to make sure it's done. But with this, I don't think there would be any way to really temp that, right?
Yeah, so if you're doing a ground beef or you're doing a ground meat, typically what would happen is you would get it into a bunch, and then you'll check it with your temperature or your thermometer into that bunch, and that's going to give you the closest, most accurate reading that you can. But typically with these, we're cooking them so far over the temperature that it's not as much of an issue. So we're not trying to get that perfect medium rare kind of thing, because this dish doesn't necessarily call for that.
Exactly.
All right. So
but some of those that might have been in some of our other classes probably wondered, why are they not doing that?
Yep. So I'm going to rinse up my hands real quick and be ready to put this broccoli in as soon as that pan comes out.
Yeah, give me about probably 1 more minute, tops. Looking really good.
So, Mr. Jackie, we're cooking beef today. What's your favorite cut of beef?
Well, I'm a ribeye guy. It's perfectly marbled, and very seldom have I had a bad ribeye. If that makes any sense.
And why do you think that? Why is ribeye your favorite? What's different about it, say, than maybe a sirloin?
Well, it's a great marbled meat. So what that means is it's got fat throughout the muscle. And as it's cooking, if you think about bacon, when you're cooking bacon, it's sort of, you can see it in the pan, some greases in there. Mm-hmm. Well, imagine having some of the fat in your steak that's helping to tenderize it while it's cooking. And it makes it delicious. So having a beautiful marbled piece of meat actually helps to make the meat more tender as you're cooking it.
Yeah, so that's spot on. And the difference would be like in a sirloin. A sirloin is a much leaner cut of meat, so it's going to have less fat in there, and so typically it'll be a little bit tougher. So it might be one that you want to add a little tenderizer with, or something like that. And some people like that little bit of a chewier texture. But a good ribeye that's cooked properly, all that fat that's in there is really going to kind of just almost become like a gravy inside the meat. So it's going to really tenderize it and make a really great product. All right, so it's looking like our beef is coming off.
I think we're almost ready for that broccoli.
All right.
Just a touch more here. And of course, if you notice, I'm going to a clean dish now. I didn't put it back on the same package I pulled it out of. Wanted a clean dish, right?
Yep. So let's add a little bit more oil to that just to make sure, and then I'm going to pass this over and let you put some of this broccoli in.
All right.
And we've got a decent amount of broccoli. This was from one head of broccoli, and so I'll let Mr. Jackie decide based on his meat if we think we can use it all, or if we need it all. And if not, then we'll just use how much ever we need. We can always put the other away and use it for another dish.
Yeah, I think I would have saved that right there. I'm afraid if I don't want to overcrowd it so you can't find the beef.
Awesome.
There's a commercial when I was growing up. Where's the beef? So we don't want anybody saying that about our dish today.
Yep. So we want to have it highlighted in this dish. All right. So when he's getting ready to do this and he's moving this broccoli around, This is a product that we know that we don't technically even have to cook. So there's nothing necessarily that we're looking forward to say, oh, this is done or this isn't done. And it's kind of depending on your preferences and so what kind of texture you want. So for me, a little bit more al dente and just long enough to where it starts to really brighten up those florets a little bit more. And you'll see this process in a little bit start to happen.
Maybe we can even show them later the color difference. Yeah, it is amazing. And I'm the same way. I just want to get a little al dente. I like some people will boil their broccoli. I do not like my broccoli boiled. I'm either going to steam it in the microwave or I'm going to cook it in a stir fry. I think it looks nicer that way, and of course I don't lose any of the nutrition like you would if you were to boil it.
Yeah, so what he's talking about too is the loss of nutritional value. So with any vegetable, or with the majority of our vegetables, the longer you cook it and the higher the temperatures you cook it, the more leaching out of some of those nutrients you'll get. And so if we can cook it at a lower temperature and cook it for less time, and it's kind of like a scale that keeps moving with those two things, we'll keep more of the nutrients in there. So if we were to boil this, you'll see in the water will turn green. And so what's happening is some of the colors, the things that give it the color are coming out, but also a little bit of the nutrients are losing out too. So that doesn't mean that you can't have boiled vegetables because they're wonderful. But there is some extra benefits potentially to trying a little bit of this. And we always want to have a variety because the variety will give us different flavors, textures that we'll like, and so it'll keep it interesting.
Okay, we'll cut that down just a little bit. What are you thinking? Are you sort of seeing that color you want? Do you think we need to go a little further?
We'll go a little bit longer because I think I'm seeing a couple bigger pieces that might need to go a little bit longer. But overall, it's starting to get some really good color. And I'll show you the contrast of that color in a minute. But as he's getting that ready, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and grab my rice, bring it over here so I'll be ready to make my dish, and we'll try to make it look nice and pretty for our dish. And once he feels like he's got that ready, he's going to put that beef back in there, reduce his temperature just a little bit, and put his sauce in there, and then he's going to try to pull that temperature back up a little bit and let that sauce really gel to it. All right, so whenever you think you're ready, you go ahead. I'm going to get this rice over here for us.
Sounds good. I'm going to give it about 1 more minute just to make sure.
All right, so I've got my rice here. It looks wonderful. Yeah, nice and flaky. All right. And if you didn't want to use rice, so let's say that you're not a big fan of rice and you wanted something a little bit different. What you could use is you could use noodles. So there's different, you could use just a general spaghetti style noodle and give it a little bit of Asian flavoring through your sauce. Or you could always get some different types of Asian noodles. So there are different rice noodles or different other versions of the noodle that you could use to cook up. And so those are a great way. I always recommend that if you're going to do it with rice, it works really good to do a bed of rice and then put it over the top because it makes a really pretty presentation. But if you were going to do noodles, I'd cook the noodles, and then when you get ready to put that sauce in there, I'd throw it all in at the same time. And that's just basically because it'll coat that and give it that coating because it's going to be eaten a little bit more like that.
That's exactly what my family we do with our spicy chicken noodle dish.
Yep.
Exactly what you're talking about.
All right, so what he's doing now is he's getting it back in the pan, trying to get that beef up to temperature just a little bit, because we're done cooking the beef. It's cooked, it's ready to eat. We could eat it just like it is now, but he's just trying to get it close to the temperature of the broccoli, and then we're going to add in our sauce. And so what I'm going to have him do is, Mr. Jack, if you'll grab me one little piece of that broccoli out of there.
Oh, absolutely. So
all right,
I'm going to get a smaller piece.
So he's going to take a piece of that broccoli, a little small piece, and just set it over here. All right, and so as he gets ready to add his sauce, I'm just going to show you and see if you can see the difference. So I've got a piece of cooked broccoli and a piece of uncooked. And as you see, the cooked broccoli, it's got a much richer green color all the way through, whereas the uncooked has that white stem right here. So this will actually, these is the transformation that happens. And as I'm touching it, I can feel that it's much softer versus the firmness that's over here. So I know this is about cooked perfectly like I would have it. If you kept cooking it, it would just get mushier and mushier, and so that texture would change. So it's all dependent on what kind of texture you're looking for.
Now I've added the sauce, and as you can see, as soon as I've added it, how it starts coating all the pieces in there.
Yeah,
and this is where I think when we talk about the stir fry, this is the most important time to make sure I'm stirring it correctly.
Yep, so we want to keep it stirring and keep it moving because we don't want that sauce to start burning to our pan. All right, so everything's looking good there.
Can you smell that?
Smells are coming through great.
Since that garlic that's hit the pan from the sauce, I can literally smell that garlic just coming out.
That's awesome. All right, so this process is not going to take too much longer. He's just gonna want to get it to where it's nice and coated, and that sauce looks good on there. And then we'll get ready to put it on our plate and serve it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get a bed of rice here. And when I'm looking at this rice, I know I've got 4 servings in here. So in the pot, what I would do is I would come in here and I could half it off like this. And then I can go down, and that's going to be about my serving there. So that's about my 3/4 of cooked rice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to do this just like this. And you can, if you don't want to put it over the bed of rice, you can always take this out and put it into a measuring cup, and then put it all as one big ball, and then have your other here if you want to have a little bit different presentation. But for me, I know I'm going to like to eat it together, and so I'm going to go ahead and put me a nice bed of rice right here in the middle. And then I'm going to put my beef and broccoli over the top.
Yeah, while you're doing that, I'm sort of doing the same thing in my pan here. I'm sort of separating out the servings to make sure everybody's going to get an equal serving. Now, if I had younger children, would their serving be the same size as mine?
Yeah, so as we get older, as we grow up, our energy needs are a lot more. And so that's why we would need more food in general. So depending on our age, depending on our activity level, those types of things would factor in. So obviously someone who's a full-grown adult would require more calories than, say, a 6 or 7-year-old or something like that.
Gotcha.
All right, so I've got me a nice little bed of rice there, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead. You want to put it on there?
Yeah,
Mr.
I'll
Jackie?
go ahead that way. Since
right.
I'm touching the spatula, I want to see if I can make it as pretty as you would. Get some of that delicious beef.
That looks great.
And I want to make sure I get a couple of beautiful pieces of broccoli right on top as well. And of course, it's going to roll off on me.
That'll work great.
All right. And that would be a serving based off of the 4 servings that we had in here.
All right. So as you can see, this is our finished dish, and this is our take on beef and broccoli. So I hope you will try this recipe, or you were cooking along with us today, and you enjoyed trying out and seeing this new flavor and cooking a dish that you might have had at a restaurant but never actually made it home. So anything else we think of, Mr. Jackie?
No, all I'm ready to do is grab a fork and get to eating. What about you?
Sounds great. All right, well, we'll see you next time.
Thank you.